We have some really bad actors in our water lines.
Bacteria likes to find a way to stick, so it can create biofilm and build its community and its houses and all those things in water lines which we don't want to have.
Dental assistant turnover specifically is upwards of 30%. One of us may have SOPs, but then the next one does not. We learn from each other.
Learning from each other can sometimes be a little tricky.
We have a lot of outbreaks here in the United States.
One of my favorite phrases is there should be no guesswork in risk management. We should evaluate all of our risk and then figure out what are the processes, what are the tools, who are the people that need to be involved in each of those areas. We put the most responsibility on the people with the least amount of education,
Absolutely.
the least amount of pay, the least amount of respect oftentimes in the dental practice. The more steps that an employee has to go through, the less likely they are to be compliant. What happens when that dental assistant who you told what to do and you told them how to do it, but you failed to tell them why it's so important? And then you piled so much on them that they couldn't get it all done. What's going to give? The things that give are the things that the dentist can't see.
Everybody, it is Kevin Henry, Editor-in-Chief for DrBicuspid.com and founder of Dental Assistant Nation. Thanks so much for joining us for another podcast today. And I'm thrilled to welcome on Angela Simmons. Hey, Angela, how are you?
I'm good. How about yourself?
Hey, doing great. Before we dive into the topic, just tell our audience a little bit about you.
So I own a consulting business, Simmons Safe. We go into medical and dental practices, primarily dental, across the U.S., and we help evaluate risk. We look at all areas of risk, so OSHA, HIPAA, infection control, dental unit waterline. We have a primary focus right now on infection control and on water for dental practices, and that's if you look at what's happening in our landscape, we haven't been talking about water in dental practices for very long in the scheme of things. Yeah. Let me give you a little bit more background, and then I'll come back to that. So I started as a dental assistant 30 years ago.
Awesome.
Probably a little bit more than 30, but 30 years
we'll
ago.
Say 30.
And then I moved from there to education. I was the department chair for a CODA accredited dental assisting program for 10 years. And then I moved into consulting and eventually ended up with my own business. What I realized not so long ago was if I go back to my years working as a dental assistant, so this is in the 90s, and if I go back to my time as an educator, so 2002 to 2012, and I think about our texts, what were we teaching our students, the dental assistants that were going to be out in the community? And I very specifically look at infection control. There was nothing about water in any of those texts. I taught the infection control course for several years. I taught all of our courses at one point or another. Not in the text that we call the Bible for dental assistants, which carries them through their entire educational career. It was a year. Not in the infection control text. Was there anything about water? So it's no surprise to me that today this is still something that's not very well understood. It's not a surprise to me when we go into offices and they don't know. When we say, "Hey, what are you doing for your water? How are you making sure that that's safe for your patients?" And we get surprised looks. I'm not surprised by that. When I ask, "Are you testing your water lines?" and are we supposed to be testing our water lines? They don't know this because we haven't talked about it long enough. And so even though we look at Anaheim, which I think is really kind of the pivot point for the conversation, even though we know Georgia had 3 separate cases. I think there was a case in Maryland. There was actually a case in Virginia where I'm from. And that was a parent who realized that something was wrong and blew the whistle on that situation. So even though we have other cases, I think Anaheim is kind of what really blew that out of the water for us and opened the conversation up. But 10 years in the scheme of things, any conversation that you're having, 10 years is not a very long time.
No, agreed.
So,
well, I'm glad you're here. And I'm glad, one of the things that's changed a lot in the last 10 years has been the rise of the DSOs.
yes.
A lot of group practices, affiliated practices. And I'm curious, are you seeing the knowledge for what to do with water lines any better in the DSO maybe than they are in a GP? Is there a difference?
Not really. I mean, we have to remember that at the end of the day, what is the DSO, right? You're bringing together groups of these individual practices, right? Or you're bringing together, you have small group practices that maybe has 4 offices or 5 offices or 10, right? And then we bring them under this umbrella of the DSO. They all bring in, when they come into the DSO, they all bring in all of their preconceived notions and beliefs and processes. And what I do find when I'm in these offices is even though you may at the higher level within the DSO, so that maybe they have a compliance manager, and the compliance manager knows, hey, we should be doing these 5 things. And they try to put that information out. They make sure that, hey, it's out here, you can order through whatever platform we're ordering through. You can order these products. Here's some SOPs. But what I find when I go into these individual offices is the information doesn't trickle down as well as we would like for it to. And that may be because we're not doing a good enough job in communicating it downward. It could be that we haven't given it enough time. Yeah. And it could be that we're overwhelmed or that, those practices are overwhelmed because their world changes. When you go from private practice to part of a DSO, it changes tremendously. And I think there's a lot of stress and anxiety for those frontline employees about, hey, what is this going to do? How does my world change? And it does change, I think, pretty rapidly in a lot of ways. So then when you start trying to pile compliance on top, there's things that get dropped. So I see a lot of there's definitely a gap and some information's not trickling down as well as we would like for it to.
You mentioned the compliance manager, and we know infection control coordinators that these positions are being created.
Yes.
How important is it to have the right products purchased by these individuals, then have that training so that everybody understands how to use them properly?
So one of my favorite phrases is there should be no guesswork in risk management.
Good point.
For a DSO, one of the things that I believe should be a top priority for them is evaluating all of their risk, right? So whether we're looking at HIPAA and data security, we're looking at OSHA and employee safety, we're looking at infection control, which is employee safety again, but it's also patient safety. We're looking at very specifically drill down dental unit water lines. We should evaluate all of our risk and then figure out what are the processes, what are the tools, who are the people that need to be involved in each of those areas. When you look at water very specifically, if we get a streamlined process for employees, you're going to make it easier for them. The likelihood of success, I think, rises dramatically. When I go into offices, so we go into dental offices all across the United States. When I go into offices where you have a streamlined process, they're more likely to be compliant. Where we have a hodgepodge or where somebody has just said, oh, you can order this and do that with the water, they're not as compliant.
Yeah.
I walk into offices every day that will have a product on the shelf and I'll say, hey, what are you doing with water? And they're like, well, we have this. I'm like, well, are you putting it in the water bottles? And the answer is no. I was just in an office yesterday and they actually, this was very interesting to me. They know they need to do something with water. They had Sterastraw.
Okay.
That was awesome. I was like, yeah, this is good.
Okay.
I saw Citrasil on the shelf. I said, are you using this No. They had Fast Check 15.
Okay.
Are you using it? No. So I went through the process yesterday. I showed them how to use the Citracil. I showed them how to use the Fast Check 15, how these all work together. Hey, you don't have to take the straw out to use your Citracil because this is important. The more steps that an employee has to go through, the less likely they are to be compliant. And I think, as I'm talking about that, it all kind of comes back to this problem that I think we have in dentistry. We put the most responsibility on the people, and this is, I'm a dental assistant by trade, okay? So this is not a knock on dental assistants.
No.
We put the most responsibility on the people with the least amount of education,
Absolutely.
the least amount of pay, the least amount of respect oftentimes in the dental practice.
Preach.
And we expect them pile on, do all the sterilization, make sure you're documenting all those cycles of sterilization, make sure you're spore testing, make sure you're ordering all of my supplies, make sure you keep my rooms clean, make sure you're checking the eye wash station, make sure you're checking the fire extinguishers, you're doing all of the things and help the front desk out and sweep the floors and clean the toilets. And if you could go ahead and get the dental unit waterline maintenance taken care of as well, that would be awesome.
Wow.
But what happens when that dental assistant who you told what to do and you told them how to do it, but you failed to tell them why it's so important? And then you piled so much on them that they couldn't get it all done.
Mm-hmm.
What's going to give? The things that give, and I had somebody say this to me yesterday, the things that give are the things that the dentist can't see.
Yeah.
I'm not going to not order their supplies because they're going to know. I'm not going to not sterilize instruments because they're going to know. But if I don't get to water,
Wow.
they don't necessarily know until there's a bad outcome.
You just had like the whole dental assistant community give you a shout out right there, like all at
hope
once,
so.
I think, honestly, because I can feel that completely. Look, can we just talk about profitability for just a minute? Because I'm curious, protocols and profitability in the practice, what do you see as the connection between those two things?
Protocol and profitability.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they need to, if we're thinking about that, right, and we're looking at that from a perspective of the processes that we're trying to put into place. First of all, streamline your processes. So DSOs benefit or should benefit from standardization. That's number one. If you have a hodgepodge of protocols, that's not profitable for you. You're going to spend more money trying to put all these different protocols in place. You're going to spend more money trying to manage those protocols as well, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's beyond just the cost of the product. It's the human cost as well, right? Think about the employees. So and think about the nature of our world today. If you overwhelm that dental assistant who doesn't get the value that they should, they're going to go somewhere else.
Oh, for sure.
Because they can, right? And we're seeing that. We have a very, for lack of a better word, very nomadic workforce today, right?
Amen.
I can go somewhere else. I can go get 5 more cents an hour or $1 more an hour. I can get maybe a little bit less money, but I can get more respect. I can go somewhere else. So from a profitability perspective, it's more profitable to take care of the people that you have, train them once, train them well, and retain them.
Yes.
When you think about the products, I'm not an expert in finances. This is not my world.
All good.
I know that in compliance, it all kind of crosses lines, but I cannot help but believe that if they would streamline their processes across their locations, standardize, you can get your arms around it better, right? I know that this is the process that should be happening in all 40 of my offices, so I can evaluate that easier.
Sure.
But there should be some purchasing power there as well.
Yep.
Right? Because now we're gonna purchase one product to manage this. And it's something that I talk about from a different perspective with my clients. When I go into an office, so we manage SDS, right? Safety data sheets, part of hazard communication standard. So when I go into an office and we're helping them manage their SDS, and we have cabicide. right? That's their disinfectant. So we have Cavicide, we have the SDS for that. Then the next time I go in, they have Volo wipes. And it's like, why did you switch to Volo wipes? Because it was cheaper. And then the next time they have PD Care. Why did you switch to that? Because it was cheaper, right? So standardize. And when I go into, you have 30 locations and I go into all of them and this one's using Cavicide and this one's using PD Care and this one's using Volo wipes and this one's using Santa Cloths. Standardize.
Yeah, absolutely.
Get the purchasing power that's associated with that and help your employees, right? It's very hard for them to keep their arms around it. And I think it's hard to be motivated and hard to be invested when it's always a moving target.
Absolutely. Angela Simmons, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Enjoyed the conversation. And thanks to all of you who've listened to this episode of this podcast brought to you by drbycuspid.com and Dental Assistant Nation. We'll be back soon with another one, so stay tuned.